the process of last year was just an incredibly joyful one. It was, yeah, it was amazing, but at the same time, it was also a process of us walking out, I think, one of the sorest trials that we've had to endure as a married couple. I have a tissue in my back pocket. Thank you. Yeah, so just going back 3 years, I just want to share, it was 3 years ago, there was a birth of a desire in us, and that was our desire to be parents. And it's a desire that has yet to be met. And I think there might be many of you here today who can relate to that, and maybe not even just to relate to the desire of wanting to be a parent, but perhaps to the feeling of what it is to have a desire that's unmet, or to have the feeling of a loss or a longing that is in your heart. And it might be that you have the desire for joy to return to your marriage, or for your marriage or friendship to be restored, or to meet your husband, and perhaps it's for the healing in an area of your life, or breakthrough. And I think in those areas I might have covered all of us here today. And yeah, I think in the process of us hoping, this desire in me grew so deep, and it wasn't from a place of that it was like a gap in my life and this is the next thing we do and we have children and I should be fulfilled then. It was from a place of really desiring the blessing and the honor and even the responsibility that it is to be able to parent children and to parent them in the ways of God. That's my desire. And then obviously just the joy that it is to experience that miracle of life. Yeah, so in last year, January, after a year and a half of waiting and a couple of checkups and tests, we got the results that confirmed that my husband was sterile. And the doctor said the words to us that we will never have children of our own. And I'm very careful in how I say that, because I feel that I don't want to ever say that is what God says. It is what the doctor tells us, because I know that my God is the author and creator of life, and that's, yeah. He calls things, as it says in Romans, he calls things into being that were not. We are all here from being not something to being something. We're all miracles. And so, yeah, I stand on that truth. And I was really broken when I heard the news initially. I was on my own at home, and the doctor called, and she just told me the initial news. And I had never really felt the feeling of just your body going into shock, and I felt like my body just started shaking, and I just started sobbing from somewhere so deep in me. And I think it was in that place that I realized quite how deep that desire had rooted in my heart. And it's a funny thing when you hear news that kind of changes your life from that point. My whole future just looked different, and yet cars were still driving past and the wind was still blowing and life goes on, you know, but your moment, my world had just stopped in that moment. And yeah, it was my reality, and I needed to work my way through it, and with God. And I flung myself on the bed very dramatically, and I was lying there crying, like not knowing what to actually do with myself. I wanted to undo what my ears had just heard. I wanted to like take it away, but I couldn't. It was my news. And I felt the feeling of despair come and tap me on my shoulder and want to almost just cloak me. And it was not a nice feeling. And I just want to step to the side quickly just to share a kind of a strapline that I've sort of spoken over my life for many years. And it's a very simple little line. It says, living each day with eternity in mind. And it's just a reminder to me of a picture that I've always had of God, is that he is, for me, I know him, he's living, he's alive in my life. And he's my backdrop. He's like my eternal horizon, and he is constant and he's fixed and he doesn't move, he's immovable. And that is the place that I've always said, I will set my eyes on that. I'll set my eyes and fix them on him, and not on the little things that are in the foreground that are movable objects. I won't put my trust in those things. And I've always said this, I've encouraged others with it, and I've spoken it over my life. And yeah, and the things that are in the foreground can be things that are very precious to us as well. You know, not just like collectibles on this earth or your pets or whatever. It can be family and friends. it could be your health, that those things are movable. And I knew that reality, as we all do. And so I just would say, no matter what, I'm going to have my eyes set on my backdrop. And I think that was a moment where it was a testing of how rooted that was, and did I really believe that? And lying on my bed there, I just remembered my horizon. I remembered my faithful God, and I knew that He was right there with me. And I feel like in that moment I had to make a choice. I had to make a choice to find His face, to find His eyes, and I knew that they were really looking out for me because I know His goodness in my life. And I just said, Jesus, I need You now, and I need You to lift me up, and I need You to help my heart to arise. Sorry. And I think I just want to make it clear that it wasn't a crisis of faith. It wasn't that I didn't believe in Him, that would rock me from Him. I could never do that. He's too much a part of me. But it was the potential that my heart could maybe stop hoping and feeling joy and living life fully, that maybe it would stop me from celebrating with friends as they experience the miracle of life and going to all the celebrations around that. And I was like, Lord, I don't want to be held back from living life fully and enjoying that and being there and celebrating with my friends. And He's been faithful in that, and He's given me the ability to do it, and with such ease. It's not even hard. I love so many of my friends' little children. I really have found just an incredible joy in watching them even parent. And I still take leaves out of their books because I hope I can one day use them. And when I go to birthday parties and whatever, often people say, is this hard for you? Are you struggling? And I'm able to say, no, I'm not, because I don't really want your child. I want my own. So I am just so grateful to God because He allowed me to be anchored in the truth before the storm hit. And I wasn't floundering around. That moment on the bed was a moment of half an hour maybe, I don't know. But I feel like that moment was significant, and I feel like it set me on a road to move forward from there that has had so much joy. I found blossoms in my winter already. And I think Mike and I were both able together to fall back on our faith. Although it was painful, we had God just who was cushioning us immediately. And I was initially shocked, but not surprised, because the Bible says there will be trials in this life, and there are going to be hardships, and that's something that I know. And what I also know is that Jesus is my comforter, and that He has overcome already, and that I stand in Him, and that there's joy and there's places for me to rejoice in Him now, and I have a future with Him as well. And it's just so beautiful as well in Psalms. There's just so many verses that can bring comfort in those times. Like, I'm the apple of God's eye, and He covers me under the shadow of His wings, like I was covered with that blanket. It was the same thing. And He catches my tears in a jar, and He is just there. He's real, and He's been right beside me. And I take comfort also just in the fact that I know that God always knew. He always knew that would happen, and it wasn't a surprise to Him. And He was ready and waiting for me in that moment. And I just know that God has a plan and a purpose for my life. I know, and I even specifically know that when I was being formed in my mother's womb, the devil tried to erase my life then. And so it is actually a miracle that I'm standing here today, but that's just because I know there was a moment. For every one of us, it's a miracle that we're here. It's not by accident. And so just to know that I have purpose is something that has really propelled me forward, and knowing that God has a plan, and that if He wanted me alive so badly, then in this He wasn't surprised by the season, and that He has a plan in it as well. And and I can really say that I have life. I have life in my soul, in my being, in everything of my heart. I have life right now. And I just want to say to every one of us here as well is that we all share this one purpose of being alive, whether we are in Jesus or not yet. And that is that we've been made to glorify our Creator God. And in that place is the place where we find fulfillment. true fulfillment, true joy, and true peace. And we also have one main identity that hinges us all together, that holds us together, and that is our identity as daughters of the King. And all other identities are secondary, and some of them are just for a time. And anyway, they've been made to glorify God. We are to glorify Him in our marriages, in our singleness, in our parenting. And we glorify Him while we're alive, in our joy and in our pain, and in all of our identities. And I just want to, just say, like, are you all here today rooted in that same identity? And the reason I say it is because I know that that was the place that I was able to draw my sustenance and my strength from, is knowing who I am in God, and that He has made me for a purpose, and that He has made me to glorify Him. And how I can do this through this process of winter is to glorify Him in my pain, despite my pain, because He is good, and I know He is good. And if any of our other identities wobble, will we wobble, or will we be set on who He says we are, and will our eyes be set on that backdrop? And one of the verses that God spoke to me with very soon after hearing our news was Isaiah 54, which a lot of us will know. And it's the verse that says, sing for joy, O barren woman, shout for joy, and cry out to God. And the verse then does go on and say, for your tent pegs will be widened, and you will have many kids, as many as the nations. And I would love that part to be for me, and I have hope for that. But I felt that God says, stop right there after just sing for joy, O barren woman. And because I felt like He asked me to sing for joy regardless, to sing for joy and praise Him in my pain. And I think this is the place where when you see a tree flowering, I think it's a marigold tree, I don't know, but it flowers only in winter, and just so many little pink flowers, and it stands out. And I think that, I think that's what God wants me to do in this process, is to stand out and shine Him. And He's put it in me to do that. I feel that I have such a desire to do that, even, glorify Him in that. You'd think maybe glorifying Him would be like, oh, look, I've got a miracle, I've got a baby to show you. But this is what He's asked for us to do now. And And so my strapline kind of changed from living each day to dancing each day with eternity in mind. It really became something that I felt in my heart I could do. I felt just a rising up of joy in Him, that He can actually take me through this and I can still live life fully. And I just also realized something, it was like a big thing, that the process has been so significant. And just for any of you here today who are going through sore times in your life, whatever that is, I feel like just want to say, don't despise the process, because it was in that I found so many gems that have brought growth and life into me. And and I've been able to dig deeper into God, and I've been able to feel a deeper empathy that I wouldn't have been able to feel prior, and I've been able to walk with people in their pain, or they may be different. It's really been amazing. And God also likes us to be reliant on Him, and I think in His processes He takes us into a place of deep reliance, because there's nothing I can actually physically do. I can't make this happen or conjure it up. I could do some things, but I don't want to. I don't want to fill this with temporary things that aren't of Him, that aren't going to bring long-term joy. And so sometimes He removes our abilities and things in our life so that we draw close to Him and we rely on Him. And that's a beautiful thing, it's where He wants us to be and to abide daily, actually. And also just, if maybe some of you aren't relating, but you're thinking, oh, my life is all okay right now and it's rosy and things are going well, I just want to say, don't let that steer you away from just the truth of who God is, and that you'd be able to go back to falling into the place of relying on Him if something were to happen. But and don't forget that it's His air that we're breathing anyway. So I think it's for this reason that even though Mike and I really desire to have children, I think it's for this reason that, and we are open to adopting, but I feel that God hasn't released us to do that, at least for now. And He's clearly shown us that He's working important things in and through us during this time. And I've just felt Him orchestrating in the moments. Often you can look back, but I've really been able to see how in the moments God has actually been orchestrating and doing things, and refining and tweaking and nudging and guiding, and He's with me. And I've had the daily opportunity to be able to share Him with people, as I'm asked on a daily basis, sometimes a weekly basis, or do I have children and why don't I? by even maybe the lady at the checkout counter while I'm buying baby booties for a friend's baby shower or whatever. And I've just had the opportunity to speak about the hope within me, which has been such an honor, and I've embraced those moments. And when the doctor, there was like a process of tests, and when the doctor gave Mike and I our final results, and he said, "You'll never have children of your own," Mike said, "Well, we're going to trust God that he will give us a miracle and that he'll do a miracle of healing in my body." And the doctor shuffled around in his chair quite a lot, and then he said, "Well, all things happen for the good." And so, shame. He was struggling, and I think he might have been onto something there, though, actually. And I long to go back to him one day and show him how good my God is. But I'm saying today that my God is good despite that at the end. So, So, just quickly, my relationship with Mike. When I found out the news initially and Mike came home, I felt that on his way home, God said to me, tell him some things that I might have already assumed he'd know. He knows I love him. He knows that we covenanted in marriage, and that that's for better or for worse. And whatever is, although it was in his body, it's not his problem, it's our problem. We're doing this together. And that's what I felt inside of me, but it kind of wouldn't have occurred to me to actually say these things out loud and verbalize them to him. And when I did, he completely just broke down, and in that moment we wept together. And I think it just showed me how much he needed to hear that. And in that moment, God knitted us together closer, and we have had since then a deeper reliance on him together. And in circumstances which normally would tear two people apart, God has just been so faithful in being in him. He has drawn us closer together and actually made us stronger. And it's been an honor walking through this, holding his hand. Yeah, I think of the last year as well. Mike and I had so many prophetic words spoken over our lives, words from God spoken through people to us, and about our future in him, and about walking with like adult children, and and it was just amazing looking back on each moment, how so often I wasn't in those moments thinking, oh Lord, will you tell me I'll be a mom? That thought didn't even cross my mind, because in those moments there was just so much fulfillment in what he was speaking over our lives, because this is what he's made us to do. We've started to walk into things that he's called us to do from before we were even knitted in our mom's wombs. He's spoken these things over our life, and I really can say that I feel like we're walking in his plan for our life more now than ever. In this winter season, he has brought us onto a very specific path that we know he's always set out for us, and I'm so grateful to be on it. And I'm going to be ending off soon. But I just want to also say that we still cry many tears, and it's like kind of, when you have a pain on the outside, you may be limp and it's obvious that there's a pain, but it's kind of like there's that thing inside of me that I just know something's different. There's not a moment that I don't walk around where I feel like my life has changed as well, in terms of this longing for this desire. It's with me. It's with me every day. And I cry out to God often, and I say, God, remember me, and like he did with Hannah in the Bible. And I hope he has great plans for me, like he did with Hannah and Elizabeth and Mary and all those women that he made their wombs fruitful. And I cry out to ask him to allow me the joy and the blessing and the privilege of raising children in his ways, and children who will stand upright before him, who will praise his name into the next generation, who, just to have that joy to be able to put something into someone else's life and to live an eternity with them. I would love to have that. And so I contend for the seed in Mike's body, that if the devil has tried to come and steal it, I fight against that, and I do. I want to claim it back, and I want to say that my womb will be fruitful. And there's a beautiful Psalm 128 is something that I often pray over us and over Mike, and it says, Blessed is everyone who fears the Lord, who walks in his ways. You will eat the fruit of your labor. Blessing and prosperity will be yours. Your wife will be like a fruitful vine within your house, and your sons will be like olive shoots around a table. Blessed is the man who fears the Lord. And I pray often that Mike will fear the Lord more. He does. But I think there's a key in that. Yeah, I love to speak God's words over our lives because there is just so much life in them. And yeah, I have full hope for healing, for a miracle. And I believe that it is not impossible for God to do this. And if you come to my house, it's not evident in the form of a baby room, but you'll see little like outworkings of my faith made visible. We have made little declarations. I've bought something for a friend and then ended up keeping it and just felt drawn to. And yeah, and like it's cool to keep your faith alive as well and your hope in Him alive. And yeah, and so at the same time, I also don't want my hope for this one thing to be the hinging factor on living life fully. I've really felt that, you know, we can just do everything through this one desire. Our motivations can be through this thing, and our prayers to God can all be through this one thing we want from Him. And I really felt that I don't want to ever set this desire up as an idol in my life. And yeah, and so there's a story in Daniel, which we probably all know quite well, but it was revealed to me and reminded to me by someone else who's going through a trial of suffering at this time. And it's just the story of, I always want to say Radshak, but it's Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Yeah. And when they wouldn't bow down to King Nebuchadnezzar's idol, he'd set up a golden image, and they wouldn't bow down because they believe in our one true God. And he brought them, and he was going to throw them into a burning fiery furnace, which he heated up 7 times, even hotter. And while they were standing there, they said to him, let's get the verse. Oh, I've lost it. But basically, the thing is, they said to him, we will not bow down to your image, and our God will save us from your hand. He is faithful to save us. And they said, but if not, O king, let it be known to you, O king, that we will never bow down to your image, and we will always serve our living God. Something like that. And it just was such a beautiful thing that they were 100% believing in God to heal, save, and rescue them, but they also were 100% believing in God to, that in the sovereign God, that in His perfect ways, that no matter what happened, that His ways were good. And so it was glorifying God through their adoration and praise as well. And He would be glorified either way, through faith for healing or through faith in Him as a living and sovereign God. And yeah, God has just led me to a really deep reliance on Him in this winter, and I've come to see that this has just been such a gift. It's taken me to a place where I've grown deeper in my character and my relationship with Him, and I know that this is where He wants me to abide. And so I honestly can say that I have an excitement and anticipation for my future to see what He is unfolding. And I don't want to ever seem like I'm so strong and I kind of know how to rely on my God so well, because I think in this place I've never felt weaker. Yet I have a greater confidence in Him. He does things the other way around sometimes. And my heart is still tender, but I feel safe in His hands, and I know that He loves me. And I will always keep trusting Him for my future, and because I know that it's going to be good in Him, and I will always keep hoping for a miracle. And I just want to read a quick little a line. It's something that Spurgeon said, and it kind of rounded it up so well, and I want to say it out to all of you. God permits us to get into predicaments without human solutions. When He wants us to have great influence, He often permits us to face great challenges. People could start admiring you for your status and your armor, when all the time it was your affliction that drove you to your knees and allowed God to make you the person you've become. Before you can be exceptional, you must work to develop a faith that believes God for the impossible and trust what He says regardless of the odds. If we cannot believe God when circumstances seem to be against us, then I have to ask the question, do we believe in Him at all? And I just want to encourage you all today to not lose hope when times get tough, and to find the gems in the processes, in the winters of life, because they're there, and when you're in God, they're there. And there's just a much bigger picture forming on the horizon, and it's just so good and wise to get anchored in the truths now. And I just want to say out loud that I will glorify His name to the end of my days, no matter what.